This video is made possible by Wix. If you're ready to create a website, head over to wix.com/go/infographics2019 to try out one of their premium plans right now. "We go tonight" is often the dramatic movie line you hear in the prison escape epic. But in the case of escapes, fiction doesn't need to embellish hard facts. It's some endeavor for the prisoner to break out of a cell, go over a wall, dig tunnels under the ground, sometimes tie up a guard, and for the criminal with some cash behind him, perhaps get a helicopter out of there. We've already told you about possibly the only escape from the notorious prison of Alcatraz, of El Chapo's escape tunnel, and we've gone over some pretty terrible failed escapes. But what we have for you today, we can say, are some of the most ingenious prison escapes on record. Number 9. Explosive fruit. In 1996, the New York Times reported that a man who had been serving an 18-year sentence in France for armed robbery managed to escape from prison. This was a 34-year-old called Michel Vougeot who had previously escaped from prison in France 3 times. This escape was said to be his most brazen, worthy of a trophy if they were awarded for such criminal activity. It was reported that Vougeot flew away in a helicopter with a woman who it was later said was his wife and who had been taking flying lessons in preparation for the escape. What the Times didn't say was that to get to the roof, Vougeot had an ingenious way of getting past guards. He was holding grenades and threatening to throw them at anyone who got in his way, except those grenades, according to CNN, were nectarines that he had earlier painted to look like grenades. CNN said that he was later captured, but then says he ended up doing another bank robbery only to be shot in the head and survive. We're not sure where he is right now, but it seems he's written a book and is a free man. Number 8. More foodstuff. Prior to this 2015 escape, no one had ever escaped from the maximum security Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. At around 5 a.m., guards discovered that 2 men were missing from their cells, and they were the convicted murderers Richard Matt and David Sweat. It was soon found out that these men had painstakingly made a tunnel whose ending, called an external breach, was 500 feet outside the prison walls. This would of course take some doing with a spoon, but it said the men managed to get a hold of tools from contractors inside the prison. Those tunnels were partially already made, but still a lot of digging, breaking, and cutting had to be done. The New York Times said that the men first had to cut through the cell, and for that they used a hacksaw. A prison tailor later admitted he'd been smuggling in blades hidden inside frozen hamburger meat. The escape had been compared to the one in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, but it ended badly after a massive manhunt resulted in Matt being shot and killed by U.S. Border Patrol and Sweat being shot and then sent back to prison. Number 7. Tight fit. This is the story of a man nicknamed the Korean Houdini, and we very much doubt anyone will ever repeat what he did to get out of prison. That's because he didn't require any fancy tools, helicopters, or weapons. He just needed to lose a bit of weight and become more flexible. On the day of his escape in 2012, he covered himself in a kind of gel and then proceeded to squeeze his body through a 15-centimeter high, 45-centimeter wide food slot. Take a moment, please, to imagine what that might have looked like. The police at the detention center in Daegu Police Station in Korea were rightly stumped. It was only when they looked at surveillance footage that they saw the 165-centimeter, 114-pound man slipping through the small hole that they knew how he had gotten away. The man was said to be very flexible because during the 23 years he'd been incarcerated during his life, he had been practicing yoga and had become a master. He was recaptured anyway a few weeks later. The Korean authorities later told the press that they had now given him a cell with a smaller food slot. Number 6. The Studious Serial Killer. There's no doubt you've all heard of Ted Bundy, perhaps one of the most demented and violent serial killers in American history. What you might not know is that he escaped from cells twice during his incarceration in the 1970s. The first time was perhaps the most ingenious, with Bundy telling authorities he needed to study law as he was representing himself. He'd already studied law as a free man, but during a court trial he said he needed to read up on something. He was given access to the library during recess, and as he wasn't wearing restraints because he was both lawyer and prisoner, he went to that library unimpeded. He then jumped out of a second-story window and went on the run. He was recaptured, but then when imprisoned at a later date, he used books again to escape. This time, he simply got through the jailhouse roof and then left books under his blanket so guards would think it was him sleeping. According to Bundy, one of the most educated serial killers we've seen, escaping was easy. This is what he said to a prison psychologist on the telephone. "Over the months, I had noticed a number of opportunities to just walk right out. I'd thought a great deal about escape, and I didn't know if I had the guts to do it, quite frankly." Number 5. A simple plan. This next one might sound simple, but it took guts, and you could say there was genius in the simplicity. The escapee was called Charles Victor Thompson, and he'd been sentenced to death for murdering his girlfriend in 1998. During his time behind bars, he conceived of a simple plan, and that was to walk right out of prison. For this, he first had to smuggle in ordinary clothes. And in 2005, he arranged a meeting with his lawyer. Apparently, at one point, the lawyer left the room, and then Thompson got into his civilian clothes. He opened the door and started walking, and then after that, he said he just later walked anywhere he could find open doors until he found himself next to a door that led to freedom. He didn't last long on the outside, however, and while he was sheltered and fed because he was pretending to be a Hurricane Katrina evacuee, the cops got him after he made a drunken phone call. He's now back in prison and has written a couple of books. Oh, and to this day, no one knows where he got the handcuff key from, and Thompson doesn't want to tell. Number 4. The Escape Artist. Here we have a notorious British criminal with quite a brain, and that's because not only did he break out of prisons 3 times, but he learned law while inside and represented himself. His name was Alfie Hines, and he was to serve a 12-year stint for armed robbery in the 1950s. During one of those escapes, he'd gotten fellow inmates to do some work on a toilet door, and that meant attaching metal screw eyes to the door. When Hines asked to go to the toilet, he was escorted by 2 officers, but then Hines pushed the officers into a toilet and attached a padlock he'd earlier smuggled into the screw eyes. His freedom lasted all but 5 hours. Nonetheless, after escaping another 2 times, he was eventually given a pardon for his crimes because of his vast knowledge of the British legal system. After that, he acquired celebrity status in the UK. Number 3. A sticky situation. The BBC reported in 2017 that a whole bunch of inmates had escaped from an Alabama prison after tricking a guard with peanut butter. The article tells us that the inmates were well aware that one of the guards was new and perhaps didn't know his way around very well. It said the prisoners used peanut butter to cover up a number on an exit door. In a statement, the sheriff's office explained exactly what happened. That statement read, "The inmates took advantage of a new guard by using peanut butter to conceal an exit door number. When the inmates called for the guard to open the door and let them in the cell, the guard inadvertently opened the exit door." The BBC, having fun with this one, wrote, "It was not clear which variety of the paste was used by the prisoners, or whether it was crunchy or smooth." The US authorities did say the men were clever, but they weren't that clever because they were all rearrested shortly after tasting freedom. Number 2. The Transvestite. The year was 2012, a year when a drug trafficker from Brazil decided he didn't want to spend any more time behind locked doors. His name is Ronaldo Silva, and during a visit with his wife, he just walked out of the prison. We're not sure what happened to the wife. What he had done was switch clothes with his loved one while she was visiting him. He then put on some lipstick that she had brought in and also donned a woman's wig and some high heels. Prior to this, we should say that he had a very close shave. He apparently got out of the prison, but someone later told police that a strange-looking man not walking very well was hanging around a bus stop. Police then arrested him. You can see the photos online of how he looked dressed as a woman. And you might agree with us that it's frankly amazing he got 1 foot out of the visiting room. Number 1. Mass escape from the maze. This might be the biggest prison escape in history, but if not, it's certainly the biggest in terms of numbers that the UK has ever seen. That's because 35 prisoners got out. It was in 1983, and this group all belonged to the Irish Republican Army. They made it out of a prison in Belfast, Northern Ireland called Maze. We won't call it too ingenious as it took some amount of violence to escape, but 35 nonetheless is a big number when we consider the facility was maximum security. With knives and smuggled guns, the group of inmates demanded that the officers they had hostage give them their clothes and car keys, and that they did under duress. An alarm was raised and there was mayhem in the prison, but with hostages it was a tricky situation. Later, the inmates got hold of a food truck and tried to drive it out of the gates, with some of the inmates dressed in officers' uniforms and so causing confusion. The officers blocked the gates with their cars, and so the men got out and proceeded on foot. Officers were shot and stabbed during this ordeal, deal and 1 man died. Others were very seriously injured. 38 were in the escape gang, but 3 didn't make it out. It was called the biggest prison escape in Europe since World War II. 15 men were recaptured that same day and another 3 soon after. What happened to the rest is a long story, but some were killed, some were sent back to prison, and some were extradited from the USA. Out of the 38 that tried to get out that day, after many years, only 2 men have evaded arrest or being killed. Not every plan in life has to be so complex, especially when it comes to building websites. Wix makes it simple with their easy drag-and-drop interface and fully customizable templates, so you can build a fantastic website in no time. Or if you're ready for the challenge, their suite of robust design tools lets you build a website from the ground up. There's no need to overthink it. Try out Wix today and get your website started by visiting the link in the description or going to wix.com/go/infographics2019. Which one do you think is worthy of top place? Tell us in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video, What Do the Last 24 Hours on Death Row Look Like? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.